Hello, welcome back to IAH, the creative process. Today we're going to talk a lot about the project for the week, which is making a collage. You are going to make a collage for your assignment. Um, the project is to make a collage. The questions for this week's quiz are sort of going to be about that process of making art and making your collage and sort of digging in and finding your style of art and what kind of art you like so that the collage that you make is an enjoyable process for you. Also, the discussion this week is about takes you through the process of making a collage. So I would actually suggest doing that discussion post before you maybe start your project so that you can see someone take you through the process of making that collage. So one of the things that we really have to do as creative people and as people in general is we have to start working on our time management and figuring out what our priorities are. So there's this idea called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, and the idea is quite frankly a little bit gross, but the idea is if you tackle the worst, biggest thing that you have to do on your to-do list first thing in the morning, then anything else that you need to do or have to do the rest of the day is going to seem easy. But if we leave that big project for the end of the day, then it's looming over us and the day's going to not be as enjoyable and our work is not going to be, we're not going to feel as accomplished if we don't just go ahead and get that big project done right away. The other thing I want to touch on is that you have to set up your priority list. If you are somebody who is an artist who wants to produce and be creative, you have to make that a priority. The world will always give us things to do. There is always dishes. There's always cleaning that needs to be done. There is always, the newest series out on Netflix. But if we want to be artists and if that's important to us, then we have to make that a priority. So why make art? That's a great question. Nobody, not very many people have to make art. It's not a necessity necessarily, but research has found that being artistic and doing art reduces stress and anxiety. It improves the connections in our brain because we're using different parts of our brain. Playing music is associated with cognitive gains. It can help us get over our sadness. And sometimes you might sit through a class and somebody's sketching the entire time. And it might seem rude, but what's probably happening is that person can focus a lot better while they're sketching. So if you have trouble focusing, it might be something to try, just to sketch through it. It helps your brain focus on what is being said and presented to you. So the big question is, how do you come up with ideas for your art? Well, if you read the chapter for the week, chapter 6 in The Creative Habit, Twyla Tharp talks a lot about scratching, what she calls scratching. And the main idea is that if you've ever watched a chicken all day, they walk around in the dirt, and they just scratch at the dirt and they peck at the dirt and they're looking for, bugs and food and worms and all that. But they do that all day long. What does that mean for us? Well, for me, it means that as I go up throughout my day, I have to be taking the everyday things that happen in life and, picking through that to see if there's something that inspires me, something that I could create on, something that is maybe the just the beginning little nut of an idea that can be expanded on. Sometimes scratching can look like you're borrowing or appropriating. Um, when I'm doing a scenic design, after I've read the script and met with the director and the design team for the first time for that initial concept meeting, my next, the next little bit of time is really, really important to me. So it's when I'm doing the research, going through ideas, starting to sketch. And typically, what I'll do is I'll take a couple of evenings and just stay at the office and make sure that it's quiet so that I can really dig through those ideas and find one or two that are pretty solid that can be that foundational idea for the scenic design. So you have to have done the work in order to be able to do the scratching. It takes a lot of time. Sometimes it takes way longer than you think. A lot of times people will just give up. They think, I'm never going to find any idea. But you have to sort of keep going and keep digging through all that information. Another thing that Twyla Tharp said is a good idea is one that turns you on rather than shuts you off. It keeps generating more ideas and they improve on one another. A bad idea closes doors instead of opening them. It's confining and restrictive. The line between good and bad ideas is very thin. So if you have a project and you feel like there's nowhere to go with it, then it's probably a bad idea. And it either needs to be expanded on, maybe you need to combine it with another idea, or maybe you need to start over and do some more scratching to find an idea that drives you to move forward. Maybe look at these questions. What 5 words do you think of when reflecting on the year? Which this year could be like a biggie. It's been quite a year this year. And if you're following the news at all, there is a lot of art that is coming out of these really intense situations that are happening in our country. So you could reflect on some of that, some of what's happening in our world. Who are your 3 favorite artists, and what would that look like for a theme? If you can maybe pick out some of the things that they will create often, or maybe it's a style, or maybe it's a color that you want to focus on. What story do you want to tell your community? Is there something that you have to say that you can use art to communicate that? What's important to you? Or, there is nothing wrong with doing a piece of art and exploring art just for fun, or just because it's something that you like. Especially as you're beginning your artistic journey, you are going to just play around. So down below this video, there's another video, and it's How I Get My Original Ideas by Kesh. So he kind of takes you through what he calls a creative bank account, which I think is that same idea of scratching and making sure to take in things from your everyday life that you like and you enjoy. So go ahead and take a minute. You can pause this video and you can watch that video by Kesh down below. So one thing that might help drive you in your art and in coming up with a theme for your collage is just to think about your identity, sort of do some self-reflection. Maybe things from your childhood, maybe it's yearning for something, or you just want to self-express. So this last question is, will you work knowing that possibly no one will show up? The tricky thing about art, theater, music, creativity in general is that there's no guarantee that anyone will like. So Vincent van Gogh, for example, was a painter, and he continued to paint as though his life depended on it. And even though his paint was ridiculed at the time, it was even used as target practice, he didn't give up because it was important to him, it was vital to him. So, for this week's reflection, part one, I want you to think about a project that you've done or a piece of art that you've created in the past that you were proud of. And what made you feel proud of it? Did you put a lot of time in it? Did it just turn out? Did it take you a lot longer than maybe you expected? I think a lot of times people will go into projects anticipating one amount of time, and then it takes a lot longer. And as we move into this week's collage project, do you have an idea for your collage already? Do you sort of have a theme that you want to follow? Do you plan to accentuate with some like paint pens or Sharpie markers or anything? So start to formulate your ideas and what you want to do. So the plan that you write in the reflection, if you go a completely different way for your assignment that you turn in, that's okay. Really quickly, I wanted to talk you through some different styles of collage. So this first page right here, you can see there are 3 different collages by 3 different artists, and they all say totally different things. So I want you to look at them, and I want you to notice that they have sort of a color scheme. So that first one is, black and whites, and then it's accentuated with oranges and reds, some really nice warm tones. The second one, we've really focused in on sort of green. And then obviously that last one with the mountains and the outdoor scenes, it's very blue, purple, natural colors. These are all fairly geometric. And that middle one is really inspirational. What you think you become. So obviously that artist sort of had something to say. So if you look at these two, we're focused more in on individual people this time. This first one, the girl with the pearl earring, is really, really simple. It's really understated, but it's very, very intentional. So that artist decided on something and found the perfect picture to go over the face of. So if you look at these two, I love that the one has used text just out of a book, printed out of a book, to kind of put the theme together. Again, they've used sort of that golden yellow color with the purple, which is complementary color scheme. It was a really beautiful one. And then the other one is kind of fun. It's sort of a different idea. Taking that comet and sort of overlaying the woman to, it changes what the original picture was saying. Put the black and white photos with the color of the flowers, and then they've overlaid sort of pen drawing over the top of it. So here is a collage that's going to be out of magazines that are very seasonal. So Good Vibes, it's all about summer, it's all about fruit and the color. And so this one is a fun one that maybe some of you want to model yours after. So if you want some more examples of professional artists who have used collage in their career, there is a link by the Arty Teacher. It's here on the screen, and then it will also be down below in the body of the page. So I just want to really quickly touch on what's called hushing and focusing. So hushing is when we turn off all of the distractions around us and open up our minds. So, like I was saying, when I do my scratching for a scenic design, I stay after work and I just stay in the office and really hammer out those ideas. And it takes sort of a quiet mind, a clearing of all the distractions. If you want some more ideas about how to focus, ways to focus, you can check out this article by Stephanie Voss. Again, it's down in the body of this article. So, if there's one thing that I want you to get out of today's lecture, it is that there is something called the gap. So the gap is something that every artist goes through. The gap is when we have enough knowledge and we've trained enough to really recognize good, high quality art. But we haven't necessarily developed the skill set and the techniques to accomplish that high quality art. It can be an incredibly discouraging time, but the only way to make it past the gap is to just keep practicing. So, as you can see, the Mona Lisa, painted by Leonardo da Vinci, is obviously a little more polished than the Mona Lisa, the other Mona Lisa that you see there. And I'm sure that the artist who created the other replica of the Mona Lisa was trying to better their skills, and that's the way you get there. So even though the gap can be horrible and discouraging, it's also something that we have to get through in order to better ourselves as artists. So, reflection part 2. In chapter 6 this week, Twyla Tharp talked about scratching, and we kind of talked about scratching a little bit. I talked about what that process looks like for me. So I want you to sort of think about, what does scratching look like to you? And this doesn't necessarily need to apply to fine art or music or writing. You can use scratching in whatever career you're doing, or how do you complete projects for your other classes? What does that mean to you, and how can you utilize that idea? What process did you go through to find an idea for your collage? So you can sort of do this as you sort of think about what you're going to do for your collage. I wouldn't fill out your quiz until after you've sort of gotten through the process of deciding on an idea and figuring that out, and what inspired you in that process. And then in your own words, if you had to describe your artistic style, what is that? What kind of art do you enjoy doing? So for me, my style is fairly traditional. I like the romantic period of painting, but then I also really like color. I love to add color over the top. So I love the skills that the traditional art schools taught, and then I love colors sort of laid over the top of that, or behind it, or somehow incorporated into that. So for this week, the things that you need to do: first, I would say go ahead and read the book, read the chapters in the book, and go ahead and do that discussion post first, because that discussion post is going to take you through the process of the collage. After you've done that, then I would say go ahead and let's dive in and get that collage done. And after you do that, then record your reflection questions into that quiz. I would probably do that last, just so that you can really reflect on the process of creating. If you have questions, email me at stelmeyer@msu.edu.